Hello there. So today we are going to talk about how to create a sort of coordinated animation from a layered image. So in this case we're using a Photoshop document, and if you want to open that up you should have downloaded this from D2L. You can see what it looks like inside Photoshop. But this is what we're kind of aiming for here. We've got 6 elements. They're sort of all going to be sweeping in at the same time. Kind of the same vein we did before with the videography logo that sort of came in and sort of swept down. We're trying to see if we can have these guys ease in a little bit and sort of coordinate themselves. And so it's easy to do this if we have a pre-made layered object that we can then import into Premiere instead of, say, for instance, creating all these elements in their own right inside Premiere itself. So let's go ahead and open up Premiere. I'm using my loop background here. I'm just going to use the one that I use with my little text here. So this is the same project. And I'll just go ahead and just kind of get rid of this one here. Get rid of this, and I'll get rid of these two as well. And with that done, we'll just go to our little file here, and let's just drop it on in. Let's just drag and drop it inside the editing bay here. And you're instantly going to see this little import layered file dialog box, and let's go ahead and click where it says import as, and where it says merge all layers, let's just say sequence. And in this case I'm going to get rid of the background because I don't want this black background. I want it to show through on the layers beneath it here, on the tracks beneath it. I'll press OK, and then it'll import this little sort of folder here. If I double click on that folder, I should see this sequence here. These little symbols on the corners here, this is a video, and if I look down here on this sequence, the sequence itself is has this little different logo here. So if I double click on this, this sequence will open up. And go ahead and do that. Go ahead and open that up. That sequence here is visible as in this case it looks like 6 tracks here, so 6 video tracks. And let's go ahead and select them all. Right click on them. Copy them, and let's go ahead and go back to imported the loop background here, and let's click the little V1 icon, click that off, and then click the V2 icon, and then Control V. In that case, we should see nice news. There we go. Now, with these all selected, before we do this, let me just go ahead and sort of widen this divide between the audio and the video here, just to make it to where I can see all my clips here. Bit smaller, so kind of towards the middle there. Let's sort of hover over the end and sort of extend them all out so that it's the same length as our loop background here. So just playing this, nothing really happens with our A-School News stuff. It's the looping background still moving. Let's go ahead and click off of these, and let's click on to the bottom layer here where it says this is our V2 track. And what we'll do, let's get rid of this. And I'll actually close out this as well. Close panel. What we want to do is we want to figure out where we want them all to come in. So in this case, I want these all to come in around, say, 3 seconds. So I want this to last about 3 seconds. Let me just mouse forward with the cursor keys here until I get to 3 seconds exactly. And I'll go over to my effect controls and make sure I've got loop background here. And I'll just click the little stopwatch on position, which will light up the keyframe there. And you can see down here, if you look down at the timeline, you notice that this has this little yellow badge that's lit up that has a little FX on the inside. That's our effects badge, so we know that any clip that has a little yellow badge here has this has effects applied to it. So let's click back on there, and just to make sure that we have our keyframe set up, I'm going to right click on this and select temporal interpolation and click fade in. So that will just allow us to have a sort of an easing in of this a smooth transition from motion to stationary. Alright, with that done, let's go ahead and click on motion. Make sure you can just click on motion on the side of your panel here, right click on it and say copy. And this is going to copy this keyframe and copy the attributes of that keyframe so we can apply them to the rest of the clips. I'll click off of that layer, and I'll select the ones above it, make sure I don't have this one selected, and I'll just press Control and then V. And they'll all light up, and if I click on each individual ones, you can see we have that special little hourglass looking keyframe because it has a temporal interpolation placed on it. So let's go back to our timeline here, and because we have the keyframes activated, I'm going to widen this out a little bit so I can see these a bit better. Because we have a temporal, because we have a keyframe, activated, basically any change we make to their position is going to add to the keyframe. So if we wanted to, one by one, time out the keyframes, we could. But an easier way of doing that is simply just to shorten the clip a little bit. So I'm going to shorten each of these clips, not counting the one that's on track 2. But before I do that, I'm going to click these little bugs here, these little V1, V6, V5, all those things. I'm going to click all those minus V1. I'll leave that one blank. And I'm just going to sort of go off to the side here. Let me see if I can trim these out a little bit. What are we doing here? There we go. And I'll just click on the ends and I'll just trim these in slightly, say about 15 frames or so. And just get to where they're all in, but not quite to 3 seconds. Okay. So if I look at, this is my keyframe here. Okay. And the reason why we have all these selected is because now when we click on the keyframe, when we click on the timeline, when I press the up arrow, it will take me to the beginning of each cut, right? If I press the down arrow, it'll take me to the next cut. So I can just mouse back and forth between the different cuts. And that'll just make things a little bit easier to time. So now I'm going to go through each one of these things, and I'm just going to move them off the frame because they're all going to come to the same place at 3 seconds in. And because they start at different times, their animation will be a little bit faster, but they'll all meet in the same. They'll all meet the same. They'll come in at different times. So before I do that, let's click on where it says Fit, and let's change our zoom level to say 25%, so we can see. We can move them to the outskirts here. And I'll just click here, and I'll just click on Motion up here on the Effects Control panel, which will open up our little bounding box, which allows us to click and just drag. And just drag off the screen, and then I'll click on the timeline again, and I'll move on to my next clip. I'll just press the down button, in this case the up button, right, here we go, down, and I'll just click on the next one, which will let me be there right at the beginning of the clip, and I'll do the same thing. I'll take this, and I'll click on Motion, and I'll just move it up, say, off the screen towards the top. You can go wherever you want. And I'll do the same thing. I'll just click on the next one, press the down button, and I'll click on the next clip, and we'll just click on Motion, and I'll move this off to the side, say on the opposite side that I have the previous element moving, and I'll just go down one more time, and I'll click over here, and I'll just keep doing this, and you just kind of follow along. You'll just move it at your own pace here. Click on Motion, click and drag. With the text, I'll move it the opposite direction that I have the little swirl in the middle there moving. So I'll just have it come in from the side, and we'll rush in kind of fast. So with that done, let's see what this looks like. Very nice. They all kind of come in sort of at the same time, at almost the same pace, minus the Ace School News. It comes a little bit faster. If I wanted to maybe shorten that up or make it last a little longer, I could obviously pull it off, but I could obviously change the way it moves with the keyframes. But that's a good way it is. Okay, so we could let's go ahead and just export this as its own entity here. But before we could just go ahead and file export media, but instead of doing this as an MP4, so you guys can do this at some point, but instead of making this an MP4, let's just do this. Let's make this an animation that we can put on other videos here. So I'm just going to render this background invisible, and I'm going to go to File, Export Media, and let's make this something that we can put on other clips here. So I'll go to, instead of H.264, I'll make this a QuickTime movie. And leave this alone. I'll just click on the background name here, and I'll just call this layered intro Labello. And I'll press save. And then what we'll do is we'll go down to where it says video codec, and we'll click on animation. And with that done, we can choose to keep our 8-bit plus our alpha channel. The alpha channel is what gives it its transparency. And I'll click on render at maximum depth. Have that highlighted there. And everything else will just leave the same. And you'll notice that it changed over here to custom when we did all that, so that's why we left it alone. Alright, so I'll just press export, which will take a few seconds to export. And then we'll just click on this little thing to bring it back into visibility, and I'll just layers invisible for now. And we can see that what happens is I can just take this little layered intro here, drop it into Premiere, and then I can just drop it into my timeline, and it does the exact same thing, minus all the layers. So I can apply this to any clip I want by just dropping this into Premiere, and it has that alpha channel on there, it has that invisibility there. So you can do one of two things. You can have this invisible, or you can have the others invisible. But what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and File, Export, Media, and go ahead and save this as a MP4 here. So H.264, give it the median bitrate, and call it intro on loop, or you could just call it layered image with your last name there, and just submit the detail like this with your so go ahead and try pressing export. If that doesn't work, obviously queue it up, and this will take a few minutes for it to export, and we won't wait that long. So we'll have this, and then we'll create our own version of this later on, and see you in class.